Hey everyone, welcome back to Branded. This week, I want to talk about the quiet ways that we sort of follow the crowd and maybe don't even really recognize it. So, when I say following, I'm not really talking about just outright stealing ideas or trying to sound like another brand. That's not really the kind of following that we get quietly trapped into. It's not really the following that most business owners find themselves doing. This kind of following is really quiet and really unassuming. And in fact, it can kind of be a little bit harmful to your business when you don't recognize that you're doing it as often as you are. So, this is the kind of following that will help, it'll make you play small in a way like you're letting other people's opinions dictate how you build your business. You're letting other people's strategies be the strategies that you're using in your own brand. And maybe you're letting even the aesthetics that you're seeing on someone else's like social media feed be the decision maker for how you build your brand. That kind of following is the kind that will keep you playing small because you're not tapping into your own creativity and your own intuition for the business. You're simply seeking outside of yourself. And honestly, I've done this too, especially in the beginning. I did this a lot. And every now and then I find myself doing it again and again when I'm at a point in my business where I'm feeling like it's ready for a little bit of a refresh or a pivot. And sometimes I find myself looking outside of my own creativity before I start tapping into, my own ideas. And I have to stop myself because that's not really the type of business I want to build. I don't want to replicate somebody else's. When I first started Social Jane, like I wanted to be original, but I also didn't really know what I was doing. Like I had my own tone of voice, I had my visuals, I had my process that was working for me at the time. And but then I would like see a different brand designer, someone that's doing something relatively similar to me in the industry, and I would just like lock into their content and think, okay, how can my business be like theirs, right? I instantly got into this comparison mode and was thinking that I needed to replicate what I was seeing because, maybe it was the way they were packaging their services, maybe it was the way their content looked. Regardless, all it was making me do was second guess my own direction. So it wasn't really being all that helpful. It was just keeping me in this spiral. And this wasn't because, like, I wasn't doing this sort of second guessing because I didn't believe in what my business was and what it was growing into, but I wanted my business to work. And if I looked outwardly and I saw other people's businesses working, I intuitively am like, oh, well, let me just do what they're doing because it's working. Now, to a degree, you can do that. And if you've ever been in like a business coach setting or, had mentorships or something like that, then yeah, someone else can sort of write the roadmap for you that you can start to follow. But by all means, that is not the end all be all of the direction of your business. You have to trust your own vision and your own like direction because someone else's strategies aren't going to work for you the same way. Someone else's aesthetics are not going to land the same way for you as they do for their audience. So you have to really lean into the trusting yourself side of being a business owner when it comes to keeping your brand, cohesive and scaling it. So this is a place we all get pretty caught, right? We want our businesses to work so much that we would end up replicating someone else's business just to get it to work. But that's not really the way that you're going to find the success that you're really, really seeking. Because what happens is you start following and it just becomes more and more unoriginal, right? But this is a human thing that we do. Like we see something that's working, we want to replicate it. That's natural. There's nothing super crazy about that. But you have to have the awareness enough to know that when you're constantly following and constantly seeking this validation from, these outward sources, you're never really going to tap into the momentum that you can really truly create for yourself if you just start from the creativity and the intuitive nature that you have within your business. You know what's happening in your business more than anybody else does. So it's really important that, I know you want to get it right, but you can't build something that's unforgettable with someone else's roadmap. It has to come from you. So today I wanted to kind of dig into all the quiet ways that we find ourselves following in someone else's footsteps and how we can maybe turn those moments into something that we can really start to be a leader in our own business rather than a follower. So I'm going to just like call it out. When you scroll on social media, you're following. That's why I do it less and less these days, because you immediately will find yourself in the scroll hole, as I like to call it. And it's like this black hole of comparison that you'll just start finding yourself being sucked into. So when you're scrolling, you're following. And I know in the beginning, at least for me, in the beginning of my business, when I was scrolling, I kept telling myself, oh, it's for inspiration. I'm going to scroll so I can get inspired. I can find some ideas. And to a degree, that is true. But how frequently do you forget that you're actually looking for inspiration and instead you're just sort of mindlessly scrolling, looking at shit that like does not matter and is not moving the needle in your business? It can happen like in the blink of an eye, right? Because your attention quickly sort of fades and then all of a sudden you're in this like zombie mode and you're just still scrolling and it's been an hour and you're like, well, I still have no ideas or inspiration and I've learned nothing and now I've just wasted an hour of my day. That's what scrolling will do. So, if you see a post like someone else's content is blowing up, don't start immediately rewriting your own ideas to sound like theirs, right? When you're following someone on social media and you see this sort of like their content is constantly blowing up and you're thinking, well, I just need to rewrite all of my ideas to make it sound like theirs. That's so far off the mark. I'll get to a way that actually can be really helpful for you. Stick with me. When we're following, we tend to overconsume and undercreate. And this is a big problem because, we'll make excuses like, oh, well, I'm researching, I'm finding inspiration, but that becomes an excuse for you to just be a forever learner and not ever take action. And that's why this can become really harmful for your business. You don't want to be stuck in this loop of like, oh, well, I'm just like researching this. And no, you're really just scrolling. That's really all you're doing. Go create something. And, you don't have to convince yourself that you're being intentional when really all you're doing is like collecting as much input as possible, right? If you can't hear your own voice anymore and all you're hearing is all these other creators that you're following, that's a problem. Your own voice should be louder than all the people that you're consuming content from. So when you're trying to play with someone else's timeline, and recently, one of the past episodes, we were talking about this, like when you're playing with someone else's timeline, they may be at chapter 10 in their business, and there might have been 1, 5, 10 years worth of growth happening that you're not seeing, right? You only see the highlight reel in front of you on their socials, on their websites, whatever it may be. And you're thinking to yourself, well, shit, I should be further along than I am right now because, so and so launched faster, scaled faster, is hitting milestones that I haven't hit yet. But all of these things, that's for them, right? That's their timeline. You're on your timeline. And as long as you're moving the needle every day in a direction that is actually making momentum for your business, it doesn't really matter what the milestones are. They'll get hit, right? They'll get met. When Okay, so here's a couple ways that we tend to kind of play small and don't really realize it. One of them being following someone else's timeline. Another could be that, let's say you might have a coach or somebody who's like, here are some best practices. Um, and that's great. That's a great place to start. Here are some best practices, but that's all they are. They're best practices for their business. This is what has worked for them. So it's not the end all be all for how a business is grown, for how a business is put together and scaled. So using these sort of best practices as little insights into what may happen in your business is great. But if you're using it as the hard and fast roadmap for your business, you're going to find along the way that it just doesn't work. And that's because every single one of us is unique and every single one of us builds a unique business. I could have someone building the exact same model business that I'm building, and it will turn out differently because we are two different people. And that's just the nature of it. So, utilizing someone else's best practices is a great place to start, but don't use it as the hard and fast rule that runs your business because it will keep you playing small. It'll keep you within this box that someone else created because it works for their business. Another way we tend to do this is we're afraid to outgrow versions of ourselves because, maybe like someone met you 10 years ago and fell in love with you and your business and they've been using you ever since, but maybe it's time for you to sort of evolve and grow in your business a little. And you're afraid to do that because you're afraid to lose that customer. That's not true loyalty, right? They should grow with you. And being afraid to outgrow a past version of yourself in business is that will kill a business faster than anything else if you're afraid to pivot and evolve. And that will keep you playing small, right? So if you know any of these feelings, right, if any of these are kind of hitting home for you, um, your audience can see that too, right? Your clients can feel that. They can feel that you're sort of in this follower mode. You're not really leading your business. And that's where attrition starts to happen. Clients start to fall off. You kind of stop seeing the referrals because there's a little bit of like less trust in what you're presenting and how much they can really count on you and your business because you're not truly being the leader that you need to be. So there's no shame in any of this, right? Like we all do it. I definitely did this in the beginning of my business, and there were many, many months where I felt very confused about the direction of my business. And quite honestly, it was because I was letting other people's strategies, opinions, aesthetics play the lead role. I wasn't letting myself be the leader of my own business. I wasn't trusting my own decisions, even the ones that I wasn't quite certain would work out, right? You have to trust all of those decisions, even if they don't work out, because those mistakes will lead to something that you'll learn from, and that's okay. So, yes, following is part of learning, 100%. But if you stay there for too long, it becomes a cage. You end up stuck in this cage of learning, right? This cage of, oh, I'm doing research. Oh, I'm getting inspired. Oh, I'm learning XYZ. And it keeps you from creating what you're actually meant to be bringing into the world for your business. So don't let yourself get stuck there, right? Every time you catch yourself in that sort of follower mentality where you're comparing, maybe you're over consuming, you're second guessing all of your decisions, that's a little bit of a red flag. And that's today's episode is that signal of outsourcing your creativity essentially. That's a cue for you to come back to your own vision for your business. Because when you feel the urge to imitate someone else's business, pause and ask yourself something like, what is it about this that I'm drawn to? And how could that thing that's really pulling me in, how can that translate into my business? So instead of imitating the whole thing, there's an actual, like, tangible thing that really grabbed you in, right? Maybe it was the colors, maybe it was the copy, maybe it was a mix of all of the like different ways that they presented the information. What was the offer that was there? What about it drew you in? And I've actually find myself doing this every now and then when I am on social media. If I come across, let's say it's an ad or just a regular post that's not an ad, and it draws me in, and I find myself either sliding through the carousels or actually clicking to like open up the website and learn more stuff, I use that as an opportunity to learn about what I'm liking about this business. I don't use that as an opportunity to buy their stuff. Sorry, but I don't. And as a business owner who's growing your own brand, I highly encourage you to do this. Click around on the things that actually stand out to you, not as a consumer, but as another business owner, and look at their stuff. What about it is drawing you in? What about it is making you feel like you want to imitate? And then don't imitate, but take the best feelings and parts of what you see and play with how that can translate into your own business. How could that work for you? And sleep on it for a couple days. I'll be honest, I went through a sales funnel of another brand designer, and they do like unlimited branding every month for X amount of dollars, and you get so many kind of projects a month. And I thought to myself, this was, gosh, almost a year ago at this point, but I thought to myself, wow, this is genius. What a great way to like position an offer and have it out there and have people just buying all the time. But then I thought to myself, like, that's not really how I want to run my business. I don't want a flood of people buying this because it's at a good price and having my like having to commit every single month to X amount of projects for who knows how many clients would buy into that. I love the clients I work with and I love how intimate the relationships are that I have with them because I really can get to know their businesses, and that's how I like to work. So I went ahead and scrapped that idea. I didn't spend any of my time trying to imitate it, but I saved the content so I could go back to it and look at it and really see, could this work for my business? So if you ever feel yourself imitating, there's your suggestion. If you ever find that you're feeling really behind in your business, ask yourself something like, what if I'm not actually behind? What if I'm building at the pace that is going to create something sustainable for myself? Because what's sustainable for you in the creation process of your business is completely different than someone else. Some people go a million miles a minute, and I look at them and I'm like, whoa, I, I can't work that fast. I can't think that fast. That many things can't live in my brain at one time. So I'm not the type of person that can just go, 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 go. I have to have my moments to like recharge. And so it can be really easy to feel behind because sometimes I am quite literally going much slower than the other people around me that I see. But that's okay because for me, that creates sustainability. That creates the long-term growth and scalability for my business, not this quick, cash grab, and then I have no energy to do it again. So maybe you're not behind. Maybe you're simply creating at a pace that is creating a sustainable business for yourself, right? Think of it that way. And if you feel like you're afraid to like evolve a little bit, right? Sort of shedding the past versions of your business, here's something you could ask yourself. What's the story I'm telling myself about who I'm allowed to be? Right? That's a big one because if you're not allowing yourself to be someone who is successful, who has the clients, who's making money, who's making enough money to pay your bills, right? If you don't see yourself as someone who's able and capable of doing that, then you're never going to have those things. Right? It's just like the law of attraction for the universe. If you don't think you can have them, then guess what? You're not going to have them because you're your most powerful tool in your business. So if you're afraid to become the business owner that you need to be, then it's time to like kind of shed a past version of yourself because there's something holding you back there. Your job as a business owner and as a brand leader, right? You're leading your brand, It's not to be the loudest or the fastest. It's to be the most rooted and stable and sustainable. To know who you are and build from that place, even when it's quieter, slower, maybe a little weirder than somebody else, that's really powerful. And that's what's going to keep your clients sticking around longer and giving you referrals consistently. So here's some ways that you could stop following and start leading. Some practical stuff that you can kind of do today that is relatively simple. First, you can start to audit what you're consuming. And this is huge. Like you can look at who you're following online, what kind of energy that sort of stirs in you, even the stuff you're watching on TV, right? What is it that you're consuming? How do you feel after you've consumed? Like it's just like food. If you feel like shit after you eat something, odds are you're not going to eat that thing very often, right? Same thing goes with the content that you consume. If you feel like shit afterwards, stop doing it because, if it doesn't inspire action, then it's really not worth your time. If all it's doing is creating um, anxiety and self doubt, it's time to mute it because your creativity, it cannot thrive in comparison. It just can't. It will always be suppressed under this notion that something else is better. The second thing you could really do this week is build something before you look at other things, right? So before you check like what's trending right now, before you start researching what your competitors are doing, go build something, go create something. Draft a post, sketch an idea, record a podcast, right? Then after you've done the thing and you've created and you've sort of gotten those creative juices flowing, then go back and maybe do a little bit of research and look into how you can refine it and make it a little more like packaged up to present to the world. But always, always, always create before you consume. Otherwise, you'll get stuck in that comparison. And then lastly, what you could do is revisit why you even started this business in the first place. Sometimes we'll go years without thinking about why we are doing something. We just get into this uh, like muscle memory. We get into this habit and these perpetual patterns of doing the same things over and over and over again, and we forget why you're doing it in the first place. There's a reason you started your business, right? Maybe it was a feeling, maybe you had this like really strong mission. Maybe there was a problem that you had that you found the solution to that you were like, well, shit, I'm going to turn around and make this a business, right? What was the reason you even started? Go back there, write it down for yourself. I guarantee if you keep old journals and you write down like why you started your business and you write that down today, it's probably different than it was a couple years ago because you're evolving and pivoting, and the reason you do things is different today than it was 3 years ago. So reminding yourself that your direction does not come from what's popular and happening right now. It's personal to you, right? So when you start leading from a place like that, your energy completely shifts. The content you create feels more grounded and personal and like relatable, and your brand starts to sound like you, not like the noise of everybody else around you. So at the end of the day, you don't need more strategies. You just don't. You have to trust yourself. You already know what you're doing, but you've probably just been too busy watching everybody else do what they're doing for you to even notice that you know what you're doing too, right? Don't get so wrapped up in everybody else's businesses. Focus on yours. And the next time you catch yourself in this sort of follower mode and asking yourself, oh gosh, like how do they do it? No, instead ask, how could I do this? It's not how can they do it? They're doing it. That's all you need to know. You don't need to know the how. Instead, how is it that you can make this happen for yourself? What's the version of what you're seeing that's inspiring you? How can that become something that your business then evolves into? And that practice, if you really practice looking at it from that angle, how can this work for myself? It will really change your whole business because it eliminates the comparison almost completely. You sort of stop yourself right in the middle of your comparison stride. You're like, oh, I'm fast on track to be really compare my business to someone else today. You can stop yourself right there and be like, nope, that's how can this work for my business? I don't really care that they're doing it. Good for them. Let's clap and move on. Because real leadership in your own business, like it doesn't come from being the first person that does something. It comes from being the only person that's doing it. So be the only, right? Be unique to yourself and your business. Trust it. Hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Share it with a friend who might need to hear this message, and I'll see you next week for a brand new one. Bye, guys.